Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Cozy Mystery Mingle. I'm so excited because we have one of my favorite authors on today, which is Diane Vallere. Is it Vallere or Vallere?
It's Vallere.
Vallere. Great.
Yes.
Awesome. So, hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. This is fun.
Yeah, I'm so excited you're here. So, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am Diane Vallere. I write humorous mysteries with a little bit of a style, fashion bent to them. That was my background. So that kind of ended up being in all my books, whether I tried to put it there or not.
Mm-hmm.
I have 4 different series. I have Killer Fashion, which is the most fashion-centric. I have an Outer Space Cozy Mystery series. I have a decorator, and I have a fabric shop owner.
Very cool. So if you didn't know, and I don't know if anyone follows me on Goodreads, I love all of Diane's books. I actually discovered her because of Space Cozies. So do you want to talk about that? I mean, so I noticed that you rebranded. I really love the Sylvia Stryker Space Cozies. And so they've changed though.
Yes. Well, the books are the same. I've just, first off, okay, so Sylvia Stryker is a space sleuth. She is the uniform lieutenant on a spaceship. I remember when I first had the idea to write Space Cozies, but I thought at that point, like, how am I going to come at this with a sort of style aspect or how am I going to bring fashion to the spaceship? And all of a sudden one day I thought she could manage the uniforms, and that just kind of clicked it all in. So she is a space sleuth. She's on a cruise ship in outer space. They go to different moons in the planet, in the galaxy, and she solves different crimes on each moon trek. So there are currently 4 books in the series. There is going to be a 5th one, comes out in June. So there's been a little bit of a break, but there is a 5th one. And the titles did change also, but like I said, the book stayed the same. That was just really a rebranding of the series.
Yeah, and after your book came out, there were other space cozies, and I think my friend Nikki even had like a dinosaur space cozy.
Yes.
Like, so many cozies, but it never really took off. I'm so sad because I love space cozies, and I so wanted them to happen.
It's so funny. I love them too, and there aren't a ton, but there are more. So when I first did the first Sylvia one, I was like, there aren't any, and then there were like 2, and then there were like 3, and now I think there's like 6. But I keep hearing people talking about them, and I know people are thinking about the idea. So I feel like it is kind of like moving forward. And I have heard that space is a trending topic right now. So maybe there will be more soon.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just waiting for it just takes another blockbuster Star Trek movie to come out, and then everyone will be into space.
And then everybody's into space. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I think that the challenge has been the discoverability, because it's like, a lot of people who read traditional cozies don't want to go to outer space. And a lot of people who read sci-fi don't want to read a cozy. So it's like finding that sweet spot in the middle, but people are there. Like, my favorite comments on the series are the people who say, I would never read a space book. So I read it because Diane wrote it and I liked something else that she wrote. And so I get those comments, and I'm like, that's the best, because somebody came at it who had no expectations. Yes.
Yeah. Plus there's that TV show that Seth MacFarlane made. I can't remember what it's talking about.
Orion.
I know, I just blanked.
I know exactly which one you're talking about.
And it's so good, right? Like, it's kind of funny, but it's in space, and it has little moral lessons. I was like, this is like a space cozy as a TV show.
It is. When I saw that one, I was like, this feels like what I wanted my series to feel like. It had that same thing, like it's space and humor, and there's other stuff going on, and there's same thing. Yes.
We'll make it happen.
Yes.
It'll happen someday. So anyway, so obviously that is my favorite series, but we're here to talk about her new release, which is Ranch Dressing.
Yes.
So do you want to tell everyone about Ranch Dressing? Yeah, love this cover.
Ranch Dressing. This features Samantha Kidd. She is a former fashion buyer, and this is book 15 in the series, but each book is a standalone mystery, so you can totally read them, pick any of them up. The only overriding continuous plot is her personal life, her personal development. So each book, she is trying to find a way to improve herself. She's always seeking that, like, what is it that's going to make me happy, and how can I be a better version of myself? So that also goes into each book. So there's a little life journey of hers in the lesson that she learns while she's solving the mystery. So in this particular book, she's at a dude ranch in New Jersey. Her father-in-law is thinking of buying the dude ranch. So she is there with the family as he checks it out and decides if this is a purchase he wants to make. And as most cozies, early on, she goes out to the stables and there's a body. Yes.
Okay, so this is book 15 and the Samantha kid. So has it like, let's just talk about how this one's super different because it's at a dude ranch and we're all the way out, right? Like how do you come up with all these like new locations for Samantha to go to?
So most of Samantha is set in Pennsylvania, and the series is set in a fictionalized version of Reading, Pennsylvania, which is the town where I grew up, and it's the town where I live now. And there have only been 2 books that were not set in Reading, which was book number 8, Panty Raid. She went to Las Vegas. And then this one, which is 15, where she's in New Jersey at the Dude Ranch. Everything else is in that town. So writing a long running series, I want to make sure I always keep the books fresh and they each have their own identity. So I think the very first book in the series, she makes an offhand comment about Western fashion, about how like it's her least favorite, but it always comes back in style eventually. And I remember that line and I thought someday I'm going to end up having to write a Western book because each book has a different style to it. Like she's a fashion person. There's a different look. So when I realized that, then it was in the back of my head, like, when am I going to write a Western book? When am I going to write a Western book? And then I binge watched all of Yellowstone and I was like, I'm going to write the Western book. That was really like the jumping off point. And then I went to Texas and I was eating barbecue and I was going to like, poking around Fort Worth. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm taking all these notes on my phone. I have to write this book. So that was really where like the spark for this one.
All right. And so you actually used to live in Texas, right? So did you ever think, is there ever going to be a series set in Texas in the future?
Well, there is one set in Texas. Madison Knight, my decorator, she's a mid-century modern interior decorator who's modeled her life after the actress Doris Day. And she lives in Dallas, Texas. So that series started out, she lived in the apartment where I lived at the end of my time in Dallas. So I had moved to California by the time I started that series, but I kind of thought back. I always seem to start a series after I've moved away. Think of the town a little bit differently. But so that is the Dallas series.
Okay. And so what do readers, if they just join in book 15, what do they have to know going into book 15 about Samantha? Yeah.
Samantha, because she's a former fashion buyer, she's like, that was like book 1. She had given up her job in New York to move back to the town where she grew up to buy the house that she grew up in. And that didn't go particularly well because her first day on the new job, she found her new boss dead in an elevator and she had to solve that crime. So that was book 1. So since then, she has been trying to find her place in this town and trying to find what's going to be her professional, like what's going to be her career. So each book has a different element of the fashion industry she's working for a designer, or she's working at a department store, or different things like that. But there's always that kind of fashion job element in each book. So each one's a little bit different. But ultimately, because her big move was because she had this fantastic job that like everybody would have wanted to have her job as the buyer of shoes for this major department store. And it didn't make her happy. So she always has that in her head. Like, if that didn't make me happy, how am I going to find the thing that will make me happy? Like, what is my purpose in life? So there's always this element of what is going to make her happy. So that carries into each different book as she does a little soul searching to figure out like why she does what she does.
All right, cool. I like personal growth in our characters.
Yes, there's definitely that. And I never started out thinking that was going to be there. But after I got to like book 5, I realized, you can't have a character who continually can't figure things out and is not moving forward. Like, she has to have that moment of reckoning when she's like, okay, how many times am I going to do this? How many times am I going to get in this situation and not, know what I'm doing? So she has to get smarter about it and has to reflect on herself. And I think because I started the series when I was in Texas, then I moved to California, then I moved to Pennsylvania. I had a lot of life changes in there. So that really reflected in her. As I grew, I wanted my experiences to reflect in her and her growth.
Great. Yeah. And so the thing I love too about all of your books is each of the chapters has its own chapter title. Like, that is so cool.
And I only do that in Samantha Kid and in the Space series. Those are the only 2 series. So that's really funny. So I thought when you mentioned that, I thought, yeah, something I did because I write so many different series. I want them to stand apart from each other. I want them to each have their own identity. So I started doing that. I think I started in Samantha. And then when I wrote the space books, I liked that element. The space books are also the only ones that have a character Bible at the beginning of each book. But yeah, that was just like a fun little thing to kind of set the tone of the book. Because I think it really does, like when you open that chapter, you see those titles and you kind of get a sense that this is a humorous book or like something, a little teaser of what's about to happen.
Yeah, I love it. So let's talk. So they're both in the fashion industry. So let's talk about your history in the fashion industry.
Yes. So I worked in retail for over 20 years. I started out at Macy's and then I went on to Neiman Marcus. And that's really where I had my career, which most closely matched up with Samantha's career, except hers is a fictional department store in New York. Mine was in Texas. So I, had the enviable job of getting to travel, getting to go to New York and to Europe and go to buying appointments and fashion shows and all that kind of stuff. And still I had that moment where I was like, why am I not happy? It was that same thing. The funny thing about Samantha was that I never liked to fly. I never really loved to do all that travel. But I learned that if I took my laptop on the plane, I could sit on the plane wherever I was flying and I could write. So I would plug in when we were flying to Europe, my coworkers and I, they would all take an Ambien and conk out for the flight and I would plug in and have a cup of coffee and I would start writing and I would get a couple of chapters written by the time we landed in Paris or, here in Milan. So that was definitely, she was infused with that kind of energy from the beginning.
That's very cool. Most people they're like, what's the second job you could do as a writer? No one ever says, be a fashion buyer. You can get some chapters written on the plane.
Right.
Very unique. So in every book, she has like a new assignment, a new fashion related adventure. Were any of these like dream jobs that you wanted to have?
After a couple of books, I started really fantasizing about like, what's something that I saw when I worked in retail fashion that I think would be fun to be. So like I did little fashion shows at the store that I worked at, but I thought it would be really fun to actually be in the designer showroom doing the fashion show. So there was a book where she's working with helping with put on a whole fashion show. There is a book where she's writing a style column for the local newspaper. And so that was kind of a different way to bring fashion in. I've never really done that. So I just started fantasizing about like, what else could she do with her background? And her background is really the history of fashion. That's the degree she has. So there's also she has this respect for like every single era. So if a book ever, like when there was a book that was all about jeans and denim, so that book really delved deep into the whole like history of denim and the kind of jeans that people wore and which jeans are valuable and all that kind of stuff. And there's a book that's mod. So it got really into like 1960s mod history and the designers that, are still making those clothes today. So each book allows me through her to really do that research on the era because that's her kind of hook into it, is that she's into the history of it all.
Oh. Are you still working at all in the fashion industry?
No, just in my mind, just researching in my mind.
Do you have a degree in fashion? Is that what you studied?
No, I don't. I have an art history degree.
Oh,
nice. So the history part, yes. The fashion, no. I graduated with an art history degree and I didn't know what I was going to do. So I went to the mall and I got a job selling sneakers. And from there, it became management of ladies' shoes. And then I moved to Texas to go through the buyer training program and worked in fine apparel and then lingerie and hosiery and shoes again. So it kind of like escalated from there. So it really just became like stepping stones.
Very cool. So what kind of fashion are you into these days for your own wardrobe?
Oh, when you write every day, your wardrobe gets to be about what do I not have to think about a lot that's going to be comfortable for me sitting at a computer. So it's a lot of like flare bottom pants and a sweater and out the door. So it's a lot of like easy kind of things like that. I like going to mystery conferences because that's my excuse to get to like put together a little capsule wardrobe in my mind. So I know what I'm wearing for like 4 days. So that's more fun.
Are there any fashion trends out there that you're mortified by?
There's always something, but it usually, it's funny. It usually depends on who's wearing it, because some people can pull off things that I would think there's like no way that's going to work. And then you see a picture of somebody and they look fabulous. So you're like, okay, like I can go with like stove bottom pants. I can go with flare bottom. Like I'm totally into flares, but sometimes I'll see somebody in skinny jeans and I'll go, she can pull them off. So yeah.
Skinny jeans.
There's a little bit too much stretch in jeans these days, but I do think, that's like probably my personal thing, because yeah.
I'm so glad skinny jeans are gone. I'm like so over those.
Yeah.
So Ribbon, Pennsylvania. So it's a fake town, but why Pennsylvania?
Well, I grew up in Pennsylvania, and so I knew it. I had a good sense of it memory-wise when I wasn't here. My parents have always been here, so I had that connection back to Pennsylvania. But there was something about that idea of giving up the job and moving back to the house where you grew up. So that was really that first nugget of Samantha, where she had this job, she didn't love it, and she found out her parents were moving. They were selling the house and moving to California. So she went to help them pack up and got the idea, like, I could give up all the stress of the buying job. I could give up the 65-hour work weeks. I could give up the crazy travel. I could just give it all up and buy this house and work at this local department store, and my life would be easy. And that was really, so that was the start. And the house that she buys is actually, in my mind, it's the house where I grew up. So I thought about that a lot. I must have been having a really bad day when I got the idea, because just the idea of like giving up everything seemed really great. And so I did that, and I could imagine like the department store, everything's been fictionalized. So the department store where she worked, there is a store that I picture in my mind that is where she works, but I changed the name of it. I changed, elements of it so I could have murders happen there. So, you have to watch out for those things, those little legalities. But it had that kind of cozy homecoming feel. And I also liked the fact that she was sort of straddling adulthood responsibilities now and feeling like a kid, because she's back in this house where she grew up. So there was always that sense of like, she's not mature enough. She's not adult enough to buy a house, to handle all these things happening to her. And she just wants her parents to like make everything fine. But then again, she's like in her early 30s. She bought a house. She had a career. She had all the experiences that make her an adult. So there's that kind of push-pull too about like having to step up and handle things.
But you don't actually live in your house. No.
No, I don't, but I drive past it occasionally. Okay. And I always see like, if there's a for sale sign, I might do a tour. Pictures like, this is Samantha Kidd's house.
Yeah, that's true. You could do a tour of the Samantha Kidd supposed house.
Exactly. But I'd be like, this is not what it looks like. She's redecorated.
So the Dude Ranch, as soon as I heard that it was about a dude ranch, I'm like, oh, we're going to be in Wyoming, Colorado, Texas, but we're in Eastern New Jersey. So maybe tell us how that came out.
Yes. So I had the same thought when I was like, dude ranch, where would her father-in-law be looking to buy a dude ranch? And I thought, well, he's like, now that he became part of the series, which he wasn't all along, he kind of came in around book 4 or 5, and then wasn't really a regular part of the series until later books. And I thought, well, I don't want to plunk him out in, Montana all of a sudden, because then he's not part of the series anymore. And he's really brought in some elements for humor. So I started doing some research, and I found that there are all these dude ranches in New Jersey. And I also had been going to the rodeo, which is like the longest running rodeo is in New Jersey. So I had gone to that. When I went to that, I thought there's this whole little cowboy vibe out here that I had no clue about. So I did the research, and I saw all these dude ranches in New Jersey. And I thought that makes sense, because it's then if he buys it, it's just a drive. It's a couple hours drive away. It's not a big deal. So that made that piece just kind of felt really natural for the series.
And have you been to Eastern New Jersey at any ranches?
I have not. I have only explored them online. I kept thinking I'm going to reach out and contact one and like talk my way into a tour and whatever. And it just, I was writing it. It was coming so easily and so naturally to me that I thought I don't want to take a day off. I want to just keep writing. So this really became much more about like internet research and my imagination and, that kind of.
All right. I mean, do you like Eastern New Jersey? I only think of the Jersey Shore.
Yes. I think that's what most of us think. I mean, that's definitely what I think about. So even just like looking at it on a map and seeing all these other things that exist. And that's like what I love about this part of the country too, is that there's so many different little things around here. It's not all like Pennsylvania is not all Philly. There's a lot of other things too. So like, and there's so many different states that you can go for a 2 or 3 hour drive and be in someplace completely different. Like the fact that I can drive 2 hours and go to a rodeo is crazy to me. And it's a completely different experience than it is, being in my hometown. So that, or I could go to the shore, which is another completely different experience than being at the rodeo. So I love the variety out this way.
Okay. So, ranches. Have you gone to ranches before? I've actually never been to a ranch.
I haven't been to a ranch. I may have gone to a ranch just for kind of like somewhere in my life, just wandering around, but it was not a memory that's like stuck in my mind as like, yes, that is exactly what I'm writing about. So like I said, this was a lot of internet research and it was a lot of like binge watching research, which is another thing about Samantha's character is that when she needs to learn something, she watches movies. So the mafia book she watched, I watched a lot of mafia movies because that was where her knowledge would come from about that kind of scene. So that's sort of her thing. So to prep for a trip to a dude ranch, she would watch a lot of Westerns or she would watch Yellowstone. She would do all those things. So she felt like she was an expert, even though that doesn't make you an expert.
Got it. And so are there just a bunch of hunky men running around this dude ranch?
There are some hunky men running around this dude ranch. There definitely are.
Good. That always makes the dude ranch better.
Yes. I couldn't write a dude ranch without hunky cowboys.
So that Samantha is really like a mini Diane.
I like to think of her as like she splintered off from me when we graduated college and she had a whole different experience than I did. She probably moved to New York and had that buying career and became that person. And I stayed in Pennsylvania at first and had my own career. And so there's a nugget that is the same, but she definitely has her own. She's a little more brave than I am. I think she'll dash into any situation.
Yes, she is very brave. And she doesn't really have a sidekick, right? She kind of just goes at it.
She's in Pennsylvania. She does. Her friend Eddie, who went to high school with her. That was another thing I liked being able to do in Pennsylvania was have somebody from her past be able to show up in the series. So she has Eddie as her best friend, and he is not in ranch dressing because he doesn't go along to the dude ranch. Her shoe designer husband, Nick, he's around, but he really has his own business with the shoe design company and now launching his sneaker design collaboration. So there's other friends throughout the series, but there's never like just one.
Right. But Eddie's not in the dude ranch.
No, he's not in the dude ranch one.
All right.
I couldn't figure out how to get him. I thought about having him show up, but I didn't.
Well, but I did like that a cat appeared in this book.
Yes, I liked that too. I because she has a cat, but you really wouldn't take your cat for this trip. So Eddie's back in Pennsylvania watching her cat. So there was a ranch cat, definitely.
Yeah, it's much more difficult with cats than it is if you had a dog. The dog can easily go anywhere, really.
Yes, exactly. The dog can go on multiple things. My other series, my Texas series has a dog. So the funny thing there is when I'm writing the draft, I will sometimes realize, I haven't acknowledged the dog in a long time. And I'll just put a note in the draft, like, where is Rocky? And so when I go and read through again, I'm like, I have to follow and do a search for the dog and just figure out like, okay, well, Rocky was with her here, but then he's not with her here. So she has to have him there or else she has to drop him off with somebody. Like there has to be, I have to do a special read through just for the dog.
Yeah. Well, do you have any pets?
I don't right now. I consider myself between cats at the moment. I know I will have cats again someday. I just don't have any now. So
got it.
Yes, I did.
All right. Well, What are your writing plans for 2024?
Well, I have the new space book, Warped on a Moon Trek, comes out in June. And the next Madison Knight book comes out in October. So those are the two more new books. And then I have a couple of short stories that are coming out in anthologies this year that will bring back characters that people know. So there will be some familiar. I can't really talk about those stories yet, though.
Okay. And where can readers find you?
I am on Facebook and Instagram, more regularly on Facebook. And my website, dianevallere.com. People can sign up for my weekly newsletter, The Weekly Diva. That is my JLo name because it's DIVA. So you can sign up and I send an email every Sunday.
Very cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on here and telling us all about your new book, Ranch Dressing.
Oh, of course. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah. All right, everyone. I'll leave Diana's contact in the description below or in the show notes if you're listening to this on the podcast. And we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Great.